It's time for Hostel Discourse. Here's your host, David Rolfing.
Hello again, loyal listeners, and welcome back to a very special Masters edition of Hostel Discourse. This is our first episode ever without our normal host, David Rolfing, as he is, I'm sure, frantically unpacking in Denver, Colorado. Actually, last I heard from him, he was pooping. So, unpacking in a different sense. Whoa. But, as of now, the Masters begins in just a short 10 hours. No. 10 hours. And we're all stoked about it. We got, on this episode, our most frequent guest, Chris Fisher from New York City.
Hello, thanks for having me back again.
Always a pleasure. And our other two regular guests, along with myself, Jacob Hunter, we have Jared Cozart.
Hi, gang.
And Joe Kuiper.
Hello.
And so it's a really exciting Masters this year for one reason mainly, and that is the return of Tiger Woods. And we actually had a running bet within our friend group that we're going to talk a little bit about now that has not panned out so well for myself. Chris, if you want to give the overview, or Joe, or Jared.
Not me.
I'll talk about it. I'm a diehard Tiger apologist, and look, I'll be straightforward. I've lost my fair share of bets over about the last decade because I really got into Tiger right as his life started falling apart. But my uncle is a spinal surgeon, and as disappointed I have been over the last few years, he explained to me the difference of this surgery, which was effectively removing a spinal disc and fusing the spine together, as opposed to what Tiger had been doing, which was like removing partial parts of the disc and hoping that relieves enough pain and nerve pressure or whatever. Joe would know more than I would. But anyway, plenty of reason for me to be optimistic. All I need is a sliver of hope. And I think this was in November-ish. We put a bet on whether or not Tiger makes the cut at the Masters, regardless of whether or not he plays the Masters, whether he gets hurt again. So it seems a lot clearer now because we've seen Tiger come back and play so well and swing like young Tiger. But back then there was a lot of uncertainty. So anyway, it's conveniently against all three people on this podcast.
The most recent development being that Chris offered us a nice buyout, which one of us accepted and the other two did not.
Was it accepted?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you were taking me seriously when I counter-offered for $7. You offered a $7.50 buyout, and I tried to bring it down to $7, and you said okay, but I think you didn't. I think you were joking.
Oh, no, I don't really care. If you, I'd let you buy out for $7 if you want. Or you can ride it out like the other guys.
Ride it out, baby.
Ride it out.
Hey,
definitely not. Definitely not.
Let me say one thing. If there's one thing I know about Tiger Woods, it's that. And look, I don't care what your doctor friend, uncle says. Okay, Tiger can strain his back in the next 12 hours. I know that about Tiger Woods. And I'm holding out for that to happen. I don't want him to get hurt, but like, it's just gonna happen. And don't send me hate mail whenever you wake up to the news tomorrow, everybody.
My gosh, that would make me so sad. I was just talking with someone earlier today about what we were just imagining what the moment would be like if Tiger made a 20-footer to win the Masters, and we were just thinking about the emotions that would be, and now I'm wondering what emotions I might have to prepare myself for on the other end of maybe just one big swing off the tee box and he falls to the ground or something. Gosh.
I don't think...
But,
it's just not the same. Like, We've seen him come back. He hasn't flinched or grimaced once. Like, that was something we got used to seeing. And I feel like it's easy to look on surgery and think of it as kind of a patch job, but this is like a big mechanical fusion that is like 100% cleared, good to go. It's modern technology, modern healthcare. Even though Joe works in it, he's betting against it. But our Lord and Savior Tiger Woods is back.
I did not do too much research into what his injury was. I just like making a nice bet against the T-Man.
T-Man. Yeah. Man. As golf is such an analytical sport, and there's so many great ways that you can evaluate someone's playing, as we'll talk about later. But I have not quite felt that Tiger is back, because a lot to do with his demeanor. Like, I feel like the shots, like watching him make putts and even his fist pumps and things, it's just an impression of someone who's from behind. And he's just so smiley and he's laughing all the time on the course, and it seems like he's just having too good of a time. And the more I learned about Tiger, the more I started to believe that he is who he is, because his life to some extent is kind of miserable. And I think a happy Tiger is rarely the champion. But that is so qualitative, and I don't know. I hate how little basis there is for that, but that's a big impression I'm still getting.
Well, I sort of agree and I sort of don't. I think a lot of his success was, due to his like mindset and whatnot, but he's also just the most talented golfer the world's ever seen. He's one of the longest hitters of all time. He's also he's the best iron player of all time, and he's probably the best putter of all time. And you throw all those things together, and it makes for a very good golfer. But also, to your point, like, I'm not convinced that side is gone. His demeanor is definitely different in the fact that he's a lot more approachable and he's receptive to the younger players and having a good time. And he's not necessarily seeming like he's suicidal after hitting a bad shot or something. But I also think it's kind of like it's been a process for him. I mean, he didn't know if he'd be able to swing the club, like 4 months ago. And so he's been working back. He's way ahead of schedule. And I think now that he's kind of seen that he's still got a lot of his old game, if not all of it, I think kind of the last step or one of the last steps in his comeback process is to put himself in contention, especially in a major.
Yeah.
And so I think if that happens, fingers crossed this weekend, we might see some of that, like, Tiger that's not smiling and not talking to anyone. And I'm very optimistic about the sighting of a fist pump this weekend.
Ooh. Could be a great time.
So, outside of Tiger, what is your guys' favorite thing about the Masters? Or maybe what stories are you looking forward to? I feel like we have varying degrees of golf fandom on the podcast tonight.
I think a little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like I do love the Masters. I mean, I can't actually say that. I love the idea of the Masters. I love like the reverence that it gets in our friend circle, especially. But like, I couldn't think of a storyline besides Tiger being back that really makes me interested. Besides, it's just the Masters, man. It's just the freaking Masters.
Yeah. There is a lot of baggage that's going to be maybe settled this weekend. You got Rory is I've seen some websites that have him as the lone favorite for this weekend, which I think is a little aggressive, but he's had his fair share of meltdown at the Masters, as does the Jedi Jordan Spieth. So there's people coming back with something to prove. But as far as like my favorite thing about the Masters, I'm always a fan of the Champions Dinner. That's one of my favorite things, is the last year's winner choosing designing a menu to serve to the other past champions. And Sergio Garcia, the previous champion, he did not disappoint with a very traditional Spanish dish, which Chris actually prepared for, I guess, his group of friends. How did that go?
Oh, it was fun, man. It was, the cooking was a little stressful, but it turned out really well. We made lobster over Spanish rice with a sauce. Biggest disappointment of the night was one of my friends who was supposed to bring the wine told me it was Spanish wine, and then I read the label later on in the night, and it was actually French wine. So
What?
I know that was upsetting, but
Did you have the Tres Leches?
God, yeah, Tres Leches might be my favorite cake.
Did you make it?
No, that one we just bought.
Yeah, it seems really hard to make.
Yeah, it's so good. What makes it so good?
It's so good. It's just sugar and milk, dude.
All right,
It's so good.
I can get behind that.
What about you, Big Joe? Any big things you're trying to cross off your Masters checklist this weekend?
Man, I share the sentiment that Jared said, where I've probably recently became a golf fan, and I do enjoy the Masters.
Name 10 golfers right now.
I could name 10 golfers right now. I have no doubt. But
That's a big step.
Only
Mostly
because of our
because
draft.
just drafted 4 of them. So, but I think I could have named 10 golfers before that. But no, I'm just excited because it's one of the most beautiful sporting events, I would say. I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like this year, but it just seems everything's just so pristine and beautiful, and I don't know. I'm excited to watch that. I'm excited to see how the stories develop. I probably won't honestly watch all of it. I'll probably watch a day or two of it, but I'm excited for sure.
Hey, so did we ask this question before? Have we talked about this? What would you choose, to play a round with Tiger at some random course, or to play Augusta, not by yourself, or
I'd
with
play
a friend
Augusta
or
by
something?
myself, hands down.
What'd you say?
Augusta by myself, hands down.
Yeah. Chris, you're a Tiger guy, right? You got to be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Paige, my wife, was the originator of this question. And
Oh, wow. Good for her.
it was the hardest question I've ever been asked. But I thought about it for a long time, and I eventually settled on I'd rather play around with Tiger. The main differentiator being, I think a good chunk of the enjoyment I would get from playing Augusta, I can also get from just going to Augusta and seeing the course live. Obviously, I would love to play it. I'll never get to play it in my life. But I do plan on going one day and walking the grounds. So
My pick is definitely Augusta, partly because if it's that open, I don't like the risk of getting a really bad course, because if I'm playing golf with a pro, let alone Tiger, I'm going to be too freaked out about my game, and playing a bad course is going to make things worse. And I feel like I would come away like how if you might meet a celebrity and you just stumble over your words, and you walk away and you're like, wow, they hate me and they never want to see me again, and when they don't care at all. That's probably what would happen. But I actually do think it'd be a big difference between walking the course and I want to hit number 12. I want to have that tee shot, and really these par threes. I want to see what seems to be so hard, because I think that sometimes on TV they just look so easy.
yeah,
I don't see how how they can have such a hard time with a 9-iron pitching wedge. And I see like the greens 10 yards deep, but they're the best in the world. And it's a short club.
You're talking about number 12?
Yeah.
Well, it's mostly the winds. But yeah, I'd hit it in the middle of the green every time.
Yes, it does. There is wind.
Well, I'll even it up because I'll pick Tiger too. I think I've got more to. There's more value in it for me for Tiger. Augusta is like amazing, and it's a pretty big deal for me personally to get to go to Augusta or play Augusta. Not nearly as big of a deal as for many people, I'm sure, but just more value in talking to Tiger for a few hours. So.
If you offered me a round with Michael Jordan versus Augusta, I would pick the round with Michael Jordan.
Oh,
Why do you like Michael Jordan so much more than Tiger?
What a bizarre hypothetical.
Yeah.
Dude, hey, Mike's pretty good at golf.
Yeah, he is.
I'm sure he'd kick the crap out.
Maybe it has to be a round on a bad course with your favorite person versus a round at Augusta with your least favorite person.
What?
Oh.
That makes it even more clear
Just
for me.
Okay. Well, I guess that's enough Masters talk. We have, I
Never.
guess, what might be our what?
Never enough.
Chris makes a good point. Never enough.
Wait,
so maybe we can tie it in.
Pick. Everyone has to make a pick.
Okay. Start us off, Chris.
Tiger. Fifth green jacket. You heard it here, not first, because everyone's stoked about it. Old versus the young. Tiger and Phil are playing great. Bubba's back. So many storylines.
All right, Jared.
Give me that good old country boy, Bubba.
Oh man, it's a good pick.
That's a good pick, man. He's back, baby. He's back. He's built for this course, you know. Mm-hmm. And
yep.
I pick Bubba. I do pick Tiger to not make the cut, obviously, as we've discussed. and I do pick Chris to pay me $10
$10.
When he fails to make that said cut.
Yeah.
I'll pick the boy Phil.
Ooh. All right. Will he or will he not be wearing a full button down?
God, please
Will
no.
not.
I think it'd be a good play. I think too often players in contention on Sunday overlook how they might potentially look in the green jacket. Prime example is Sergio last year. Like, he wore this crazy striped teal-colored Adidas shirt and ended up winning, and then he looked like trash in the jacket.
Yeah, but Sergio, he never thinks he's going to win a major. Like, no one
That's a great
that.
point. That's a great point. My pick is also Bubba Watson. I love a two-time champion. Feels good, and he won the match play championship, so he's got an edge with him, and he's also an absolute lunatic. And I love that about him.
Absolute madman.
I want him to next year be watching with a smile as the champions around him are eating Caesar salad, grilled chicken breasts, mashed potatoes, green beans, and finishing it with funfetti cake.
Could be way worse meals, though.
That's true. That is
yeah,
true.
The South Africans have it ridiculous.
The South Africans, they have the craziest food.
It's like cow tongue.
Oh, man.
Ugh.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with lengua.
Little lengua. They got that at Tacos Don down
yeah,
the
I feel
street.
like making out with cows.
I mean, it is pretty chewy. It doesn't taste that good.
Oh, man. Speaking of South Africans, on like this one article that goes through every Champions Dinner, the cover photo is Trevor Immelman on a grill. Like, he's got an apron on, he's like grilling stuff up. And on the grill, you can clearly see that like 3 of the patties have been absolutely mutilated. Like, they're broken up into like 5 or 6 pieces. Like, he looks like the worst barbecue cook of all time. I just thought it was funny. But it's a podcast. They're only listening. They can't see pictures.
Picture it in their mind.
They could. Let's move on to
Mutilated meat.
yes. Let's move on to open season, shall we?
Yeah.
I think this is the second time we've done this segment, right?
We did a few.
Yeah, we've done more than that.
Okay. Well, if you don't remember, this is where one person on the podcast comes forward with a hot take, a strong opinion that is somewhat unpopular, and we get the chance to pick it apart, hopefully tear it down, because I'm not a fan of this opinion. But here comes Jared with a hot golf opinion.
Yep, here I come. Watch out, boys. Watch out, world. This will revolutionize the game of golf as we know it. Well, here's the idea. It's that professional golfers should Happy Gilmore off the tee. And yeah, I'm 100% dead serious. So here's how I'm going to convince you. Like, it takes a couple steps to get to where you can be on my side. The first is I have to convince you that driving and long game is important enough to take such radical steps. To convince you of that, I turn to Mark Brody, a Columbia professor who wrote a book called Every Shot Counts about golf. And if you're a golf fan, you should probably pick that up because Mark Brody, actually, hey, Chris, you're a huge fan of his stat, strokes gained, right? Isn't that one of your favorite stats in all of sports?
Yep.
Do you want to explain? Strokes gained a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It is completely dependent on modern technology, and it was also it theoretically it is very logical, but the idea is they basically have the technology capable to trace every golf shot from like a square yardage point on the course and a square foot point on the greens. And so basically over a few years, a standard PGA tournament has roughly 160 players in the field that play 2 rounds, and then about half those players will play another 2 rounds. So you get a lot of data, long story short. And you can basically collect an average score from each square on the part of the course that is basically hittable. So the idea is, say you're on the tee and the average score on this hole is a 4.3, but then you bomb a 320-yard drive down the fairway, and from that position, the average score is a 4.04 or something. So you basically just from that tee shot, you've picked up 0.26 strokes just from your tee shot. On the field is what they call it. So it's all this data. It's broken. It can be compartmentalized to off the tee, strokes gained, approach, which is a shot from the fairway or rough into a green, and strokes gained around the green, so chipping, bunkers, pitch shots, and then strokes gained putting. And you can basically see what part of your games you're picking up strokes on the field, where you're underperforming, and you can also aggregate it to see your total game.
Yes, thank you. And so the stats really cool. And what Chris was just saying there is probably the coolest part is you can see, like, not only can you see who is picking up the most strokes on the field, but you can see where they're picking their strokes up. So anyway, after all this data has been compiled, and Mark Brody did some analysis on the data, and it turns out that your conventional wisdom in golf, which is drive for show, putt for dough, or that, putting is really the most important part, and that's what wins you tournaments. Well, it's not true. It's not quite true. Brody finds that long game is actually significantly more important than short game. So let me read you a quick quote. This is Brody. He says, "When I compare the top players on the PGA Tour, I find that the long game contributes about 2/3 to their success, while the short game and putting contributes about 1/3. Initially, I was surprised, so I analyzed the data in different ways and found that all roads led to the same conclusion." So, step one in this process is just convincing you that that distance is more important than people realize. So a lot of backlash I've gotten, I've had this conversation with other people, and they just don't buy that distance matters that much. Drive for show, putt for dough. But it does. It matters a lot more than conventional wisdom might tell you. So that's the rationale behind golfers will start increasing their distance somehow. I think Happy Gilmore is the way to do it. So then that's step one. Step two is I have to prove to you that Happy Gilmoring actually does improve distance. And to that we turn to sports science, where the 3-time major champion Padraig Harrington featured on this particular episode. And they did an episode on Happy Gilmore driving. Long story short, he was with sports science for a few hours in this afternoon, probably a whole afternoon while they filmed this episode. And they just had him Happy Gilmore, this is not something he practices or anything. So in a couple hours of doing it with sports science, he increased his average distance by 30 yards compared to, his regular drive, which is that to me, that's a staggering number when you think about him doing it. He's practiced for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that. And he's increased his average drive by 30 yards. Imagine if he practiced for years, you could probably increase your average drive by 60 yards, I'm guessing at this point, which is a ridiculous distance. Okay. Check out that episode for some more information. And actually, I put an asterisk. It's actually 2 asterisk steps, because the part, the assumption we make is that the accuracy doesn't you don't lose enough accuracy. What's a better way to say it? Your gains in the distance outweigh your loss of accuracy, because you're probably going to lose some accuracy. But I'm assuming that the golfers would be good enough for the gains in distance to offset the loss in accuracy, especially because Tigers and Jordans and a lot of golfers, one of the reasons they're so good is their approach, and then they're just unreal with irons and short irons and wedges. If you can add 30 to 60 yards to a drive and leave yourself with shorter irons and wedges, even from the rough, you might just be better off. So that's the idea. I'll leave it there, and I'll rebut anything you guys say.
Okay, so my first question is how do you think that, given this conclusion, it would work out through practice, I guess, whether in world golf rankings or results, just on a win-by-win basis. I guess if you wanted to, assume you didn't know the world golf rankings, you only had all of the statistics so far on all of the golfers, what would be your process to guess at the best golfers in the world?
I would guess the golfers that have... So I would take the 4 categories that Chris mentioned, that strokes gains, partitions or whatever, which is driving, approach, around the green, and putting. And I would weight approach the most heavily, and then I would weight driving second most heavily, and they would be pretty close. And I would weight them about double what I would weight putting, and then I would weight around the green a little less, and that would be my guess for the best golfers.
Yeah, it's not. That's not great. Because you got Sergio Garcia as your number 1 in strokes gained approaching the green, and he is he's 10th in the world golf rankings. But then you got Chesson Hadley as the I believe. Well, I hope I'm reading this right. Well, I really hope I'm reading this right. Chesson Hadley as the second best strokes gained tee to green, and he's like 79th. And I'm not running any simulations or regressions here, but I just have a really hard time seeing practical patterns show up past your Dustin Johnson, obviously, and your Justin Thomas, obviously. It's not as obvious that distance is important as it seems based on what you're saying.
Yeah, well, you picked.
Am I making sense so far?
Yeah, I mean, you made sense, but you picked 2 guys.
Sorry, I know. That's not fun, but
well,
I think it'd also be less fun to go through the whole list. Like I'm hopping around and like it doesn't look very trendy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, there's also a big flaw in the way that you're looking at the stats, though.
Okay.
The world golf rankings are a 2-year rolling average, but you're looking at 2018 stats, and about half of the 2018 season so far, most of the top 20 golfers in the world don't even play those events because it counts the wraparound season. So there's just going to be some, like, I think if you were looking at the 2-year rolling average, the same time series of strokes gained versus world golf ranking, I think you'd see a lot of similarity. Or even if you looked at it at the end of the season as opposed to like kind of a quarter of the way through the season.
Yeah.
And let me like, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you have to be really good at driving and with irons to be one of the best golfers in the world. Like you can make up for it if you're amazing at putting and short game. There are different ways to be good, but quote, I find the long game contributes about 2/3 to their success, while the short game and putting contributes about 1/3. So there are different ways to be good, but on average, like distance, long game matters more.
Okay.
So here's my, I like the ambition, and I like the kind of attitude of doing anything within the rules you can to get better. If it truly does help golfers gain distance that is marginally beneficial over accuracy lost, if I were a golfer, I would do it. Or if I were a professional golfer. If I consider myself a golfer, and if I did that on the course, I would look like an idiot. But my two problems are more in the sense of application to the sport, not necessarily whether or not it's beneficial to the player. Number one, I think it would just kind of look silly, and I think it would be kind of a weird look for the game. I don't know. I just think of like seeing kind of like husky Phil Mickelson taking like a 4-step semi-jog into his drive and hitting it. I don't know. I think it would just look weird compared to the history of the game. And I just don't know if it would be a great look. And number two, which kind of goes off of this, because I don't think it really it doesn't help the sport to have players hitting it longer, and that's actually a problem that the sport is running into, is players are hitting it too far right now. They're kind of changing the way that a lot of golf courses are supposed to be played, in the sense that some shorter par 4s are basically par 3s now. Almost every par 5 is reachable, and a lot of players have mid irons into those par 5s on their second shot. And so they're actually like, PGA officials, USGA, RNA officials are toying with the idea of like making a smaller golf ball, or making a golf ball that doesn't go as far. And so I think the idea is good, and if it's something that's within the rules, I'm all for it. But as a golfer, but I just don't know if it's a good idea for the game.
Fair enough. I have no qualms with that. And let me say this right now too. I think I was anticipating somebody saying, and perhaps one of the listeners is thinking right now, one of the skeptical listeners is thinking...
One of the closed-minded listeners.
Yeah, closed-minded idiots.
The non-believers.
No, I'm just kidding. You're not an idiot. The question you might ask is, why aren't golfers doing it? Like, if it works, why aren't we seeing it? And I think that there are a few reasons, but one goes to what you mentioned up front there, Chris, which is like, there's just you just look like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a risky thing to do, and your reputation could take such a big hit if you Happy Gilmore and it just totally bombs. Like, you just look like such an idiot. But more on that, like, the switching costs of going from a regular drive to a Happy Gilmore are very high. Like, if you spend all your practice time driving Happy Gilmoring, then for a while you're going to be really, really bad at driving, probably. And you're going to lose a lot of strokes driving, and in the short run, it's definitely not going to be worth it. So, like, no one's going to switch, because for the next few years, they're not going to be in contention. And I think another reason is, like, advanced stats are just slow to advance in sports. And so, but I think that, like, once people catch on, actually, I mean, I guess maybe people are starting to catch on that, like, distance matters, which is why they're starting to bomb it way more. But it'll get there.
I, along those lines, was kind of thinking, as a little analogy for you, about free throws in basketball, and I'd say semi-recent idea that shooting a granny shot from the free throw line could potentially be a better, more consistent way to shoot. And a few players, especially in college, have started to do that. But it looks stupid. And I think that with basketball, that might kind of like become a thing that people start doing. But with golf, it's such like a tradition-based sport, and like a esteem-based sport. Like, only the rich, affluent people play golf. And I don't think it'll ever, even though it might provide a marginal or even substantial benefit, I just can't foresee people getting over it,
Yeah,
you know?
that's-
And until, like, people accept it, like, your regular old Joes aren't going to do it, because they're not going to want to look stupid in front of their business
Yeah,
partner,
okay.
or,
I'm not
you
talking
know.
about regular Joes. I'm talking about the pros. And
Yeah,
like,
Well, the pros aren't going to do it either. Same thing.
no, I don't think it is the same thing, because I think a crucial difference in your analogy is that a basketball player's got to get picked for a team, and there is no one score at the end of the day that is telling him where he ranks amongst his peers. But in golf, there is. You get one number, and that's your score. And if Happy Gilmore, if that swing is getting you a better score at the end of the day, you are
irrational. Say
doggone
it.
you're irrational. There was a it's called Hanlon's razor, and it says that don't attribute malice or I guess just like ill intent to what could just be ignorance.
Not to be confused with Occam's razor.
You're right. Not to be confused with that. What was my tie-in there?
Jared is ignorant.
I think I might have just made a point that made no sense.
Your point is that I have malice.
It was there for a fleeting
in my
moment.
heart.
But yeah, I guess you're assuming. I guess you're doing the opposite. You are assuming some ignorance that they're just like a pro golfer could not get over how they look amongst their peers, when it's really like when you have guys like Bubba Watson already out there that are ready to look the fool and don't really care that anyone doesn't like them, and you got Bryson DeChambeau who's shaking up golf tradition all on his own, for better or for worse, and I don't like that as a. I don't think that's true. I don't think that that's a factor into why a pro golfer would not do a walk up swing off the tee box.
Fair enough.
Okay,
go ahead.
Here's another point. Unless you want to rebut that first.
I want to rebut that real quick.
Cool.
It just so happens that the three of us, you, me, and Joe, are reading currently, and Chris has already read. In fact, he recommended this book to us, Misbehaving by Richard Thaler, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, founding father of behavioral economics. Bro, people aren't rational. Like, yes, it might. You might expect that. You might expect the golfer to do what minimizes his scoring average, but I mean, there's plenty of reason to think that stuff like looking like a fool could impede the rational decision making.
Okay, then prove it. If there's plenty of reason, I need more. I need it.
Sunk cost is one in itself. The idea that all these golfers have already invested so much time in a regular golf swing, why try and adapt into something else?
I want to know what the reasons are that we have to believe that a golfer would be held back by just the impression they would have amongst their peers.
Bro, seriously? Like, you don't think people care about how they look? I think that can be a very influencing factor in maybe every single person on Earth's life.
Okay, the question I would ask instead is, do you think a golfer would care about how they look in order to gain a competitive edge?
Yeah.
And I think that is the entire culture of competitive golf, is just trying to do anything to get a competitive edge.
It would not surprise me at all. But I mean, so let me say a couple things. One, I can't prove that people are not Happy Gilmoring because they're embarrassed to try, but I think it makes sense. But I've also provided other reasons that people wouldn't Happy Gilmore, like short-term costs and slow adaptation of advanced stats.
Yeah. And here is my perhaps circumstantial rebuttal to one of your points. When I was every year, my dad and I play in the Texas Father-Son tournament, and the funny thing about that tournament is that most father-son pairs, the son is middle-aged and maybe older, and so we've gotten to know some of these guys that are super old. And there's this one pair that is really they're really not fun to play with for this reason. It's that they're the father hits his driver maybe 200 yards off the tee, but he hits it straight as an arrow, and then he hits his 3-wood 190 straight as an arrow, and he can very consistently get his team onto the green in regulation or one less, and he's a very good putter. Now, the problem is he can't hit anything over water. Like, he is totally shut down by 2 or 3 holes on any moderately difficult course in Texas. And it's for that reason that he's not a good golfer. He needs his son to be there who can actually bust a drive and clear a hazard and carry their team to being any sort of competitive. So what I'm saying is, take it to the other direction. You do have to deal with a loss of accuracy on some point at some standard when you're introducing the swing. I guess it leads to the question, like, what really were the testing situations that Patrick Harrington was going through? Because sometimes a small loss in accuracy means a huge loss in strokes.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And, you know, another thing I'm not saying is that you should Happy Gilmore off of every single tee, every golf course, everywhere. No, like if your accuracy, I mean, like on most holes, I think you'd be able to tolerate the loss of accuracy. But on some holes, like if there's a bunch of water around, then, you know, maybe the variance of accuracy, the risk is too great of hazard, and that's that's no good. So, yeah, there are definitely holes that you should not Happy Gilmore off of. So I'm not saying do it every time, but I'm saying that if they incorporate it into their game on holes that are, you know, relatively hazard free, or the risk is lower, they'll be better.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, I've
say it.
No, I'll just say I don't like a lot of the points I've been making so far, but I cannot follow you on the conscious aversion to Happy Gilmoring because a pro golfer would think it'd make him look like an idiot.
I mean, that's fine. There are other explanations. There are, but
it does seem so contradictory, because if it is as clear-cut as it seems, there's no reason why every pro golfer wouldn't do it once around.
I don't think it's as clear cut.
High switching costs too.
I'm not a physicist, but like the people that were engineers and physicists in college, I remember one in particular that was my roommate, used to tell me all the time of like how much a joke sports science is, and how they'll like their physical testing is like manipulated and set up in a way to be goofy. Not that it's all wrong, but then B, their like kind of statistical methods are also very ignorant and just kind of brash and not academic. So like I wouldn't be surprised if you know, they actually, someone ran unbiased tests of a lot of golfers, not just Patrick Harrington, professional caliber golfers. But I mean, it's hard enough to hit the ball in the middle of the club face every time, and I could see, you know, maybe that it's not actually as beneficial as it's made out to be.
Yeah.
By John Brinkus.
Well, hey, let me clarify real quick too. You know, here's the one thing I'm taking from sports science, and hopefully they can measure this simple thing easily enough and accurately enough, and that's distance. And they said that he increases distance by an average of 30 yards per drive. At the end of the episode, and like, you know, this isn't helping my case, but to the point of like them not being very scientific at all. At the end of the episode, they tack on a conclusion that's like, you know, but it wouldn't be worth it, so you shouldn't do it. But like they made no mention of, so this this is why they suck, honestly, because I wish they would have included any kind of accuracy measure, because that's what we need, and that's the data we lack. Is what's the trade-off? But anyway, to the point of like sports science kind of sucking and not being very scientific, I think they maintain that in this episode because their conclusion is very unscientific. But the point is that like distance does significantly increase when you Happy Gilmore, which that doesn't seem like it needs a whole lot of proving. You know, you're just putting more force into it.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling pretty good. And Jacob, let me make one more point. You're saying why don't they do it? You know, maybe one time around. Switching costs, like to get good enough to be accurate enough at it, it's gonna take hours and hours and hours and hours of practice that you could be practicing your regular drive, and the learning while you're on the learning curve, you're gonna be worse at both.
Dude, you part of your evidence is that Podrick Harrington picked up 30 yards in an hour, right? Yeah. 30 yards is huge. Like that is very low cost for 30 yards.
Yeah. Okay, great. Then yeah, even more evidence that they should be doing it.
Which leads me to think that there's something else. There is an intangible or
intangible reputation costs.
Well, maybe not intangible, but there are variables that we are not including because no one's doing it.
Oh man, I wish that were so, but markets aren't efficient and people aren't rational, and golfers should be Happy Gilmoring, but they're not. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that. Like, let me ask you this: do you think it's a stretch to think that golfers should be Happy Gilmoring, but they don't for some reason? Like, it'll lower their score, but like the rational person would do it, but they're not doing it. Like, is it such a stretch to say that they're just maybe irrational for some reason?
I think it is.
Really, given
think,
everything we've read.
Yeah, I do, because I think more than even most professions, golfers have the most insanely clearly defined bottom line. Right?
Finance.
Okay, you want to go down that?
I'm just saying that like financial markets aren't efficient, and they have very clear like measurements for themselves.
Someday we should have a podcast where we discuss all of the superlatives that Jacob thinks represent golf. The most athletic, the most cut and
clearest
dry,
bottom line.
Clearest bottom line.
No, that is why it's the best sport. Yeah, what it's taking for me to be on board with you, Jared, is to think that never ever once has there been a highly competitive amateur or a pro golfer that needed more distance and never even considered the option of a Happy Gilmore swing to the point that they tried it, saw the results, and decided against it. I find that seems so improbable to me.
Well, let me provide this as an explanation too. Perhaps in a few hours you can increase your distance, but the trade-off isn't worth it. Maybe you lose too much accuracy. Like my thought is that to be competitive on tour, you know, it would take much more practice. Like I think in the time that you're climbing the learning curve, you're just going to be worse. But in the long run, I think you'd be better. So, maybe it takes like it must take learning like coaching Happy Gilmore to young golfers in order for us to ever actually see it, because I think switching costs are too high in the short run, and you know, athletic careers are short, so you ain't got that time to spend. But regardless, like, I think there are good explanations for why we don't currently see it.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me get a tally here. Who?
Yeah. And this might be the good conclusion.
Okay. Yeah. Joe, what do you think?
What exactly is am I supporting or?
Well, I mean, my original statement that I tried to prove was that golfers would be better golfers if they Happy Gilmore'd off the tee. Like, they should be doing
that. I don't think that you've proven 100% that that's true, but I think that some golfers would definitely benefit from Happy Gilmoreing based on your argument.
So if you had to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to me,
I'd give a thumbs up.
Let's go!
Ooh.
Jacob, what say you?
But wait, I would also say that as the least experienced golfer in this room, I'm probably also the least credible source to support you. So
Fair enough. Jacob?
I've realized the errors in some of my ways, and I've become more affirmed in beliefs I didn't know I had. I would greenlight all research into proving you right or wrong, and just exploring the phenomenon.
Everyone should get behind that.
But I'm by no means sold. So I gotta go thumbs sideways, dude. I can't give you a thumbs up.
Thumb sideways.
It just doesn't add up for me.
Well, I guess that means I can't lose no matter what Chris does. Hey, Chris.
That's true. That gives you 1.5 between
What do you
3.
pick?
I think this is going to be a little repetitive, but I would also be thumb sideways. Full thumbs up. I'm fully convinced that distance is one of the most crucial things to being a good golfer, more crucial than putting. I think that the study wasn't great, and I'm just not fully convinced that phrased the way you said it, implementing a Happy Gilmore swing would make golfers better. I think it could. I'm just not fully convinced. And I also think it's bad for the game. And I think if someone actually started trying to do it on tour, I wouldn't be surprised if they just did an immediate rule change.
Yeah.
Because there's no benefit to the game.
Oh,
I read a little more. I was trying to look up some stuff on when Patrick Harrington was thinking about doing it, and he said that the accuracy trade-off wasn't worth it. Whether or not that was something he looked into more statistically, I'm not sure. But then there was kind of an interesting quote, another thing I didn't think of, and probably an additional reason it's not good for the game. But if you see pros start doing something, it's one of the best things about golf is it's the exact same game that the pros play. And sometimes you can hit shots just as good as pros do. You just don't do it nearly as often. But they said that basically they would be worried about a lot of damage to the course being done because people that don't do it nearly as much would be taking running swings and, I don't know.
Yeah.
Divots the size of Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true. And, I make no comment about whether it's good or bad for the game, only about whether it's good or bad for the players.
Well, it's a great case, and one that I hope is resolved in a better way.
Man.
And I hope I prove to be right.
I hope not so bad.
Yeah.
Like it'd just be so fun. It'd be so fun if Happy Gilmore makes you better. Hey, what do you guys think of this? What do you think of this? So I don't fully understand why distance is worse for the game, or like just like so much distance is worse for the game, you know, at a certain point. But I do think that adding a Happy Gilmore might just interest some fringe golf fans. I mean, you'd get some more viewership. You would make some more fans. You think that's true or false?
True.
I'm not convinced of that. I think it would at most be like a blip on the radar. Like if it started becoming a phenomenon, people would be like, oh, like that's interesting. But it would be like over a week or two. I don't think it would bring in a new audience that's not there.
Well, I go out as I came in, neither a winner nor loser, but happy and proud.
Happy and Gilmore. Yes.
Yeah.
Happy and
All right. Well, that's a good episode, I think. I think it's time to go to bed, wake up early, get some coffee and a sausage roll, see if I can't catch that first tee shot.
What time's the tee off?
7:30 Central, by my calculations. Do you have different info, Chris?
Nope, that's the first tee time, but if you're trying to catch the honorary starters of Gary Player and Jack Nicklaus, that's from 6:45 to 7 Central.
But it won't matter to anyone listening. It will have already happened.
Bummer.
It is a bummer. But anyway, thank you guys for joining and cranking out. We're on an insane streak of weekly episodes.
Yeah.
Is this not the third in a row, or we're going to have a third?
Yeah, we're gonna have a third, but like, I might pour some cool water on that insane streak of like two in a row. There's 3 in a row. Is not. That's pretty not insane.
Dude, it's a
streak.
Okay?
No doubt about that.
I think in the way that Joe is he's a straw man guy. I'm so superfluous.
Yeah.
The way I talk about
exaggerator.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Don't change who you are.
Look, golf's just a sport where you're just chasing a little ball around, and it's stupid. So.
Golf is the greatest game. It's God's gift to humanity.
You two going back and forth. Spare me. Chris and I will have some good thought out arguments over here.
Yeah.
No, God.
that's boring.
God gifted us golf. I'm fully convinced.
Well, we've got
the best sport in the world.
We got Strawman Joe, and then we got God's gift, which is true in my opinion. That is true. I don't think. I hope I convinced everybody that this is a very rational argument tonight. Like, there's a lot of reason to believe that Happy Gilmore will make you better.
Yeah, there is. It's intuitive, but I'm big on counterintuitive. So,
that contradicts your rationality-based player argument.
Bang! See ya. Hey, it's not too late to flip that thumb straight up in the air.
All right.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it does.
Chris gave me a thumbs up. I'm counting that. That's a win.
That's 2 thumbs.
But if I had a bottom line, it would just be that golfers know more than we do.
So do
we do right now.
I don't know, man. So do financial analysts, like Chris. But Chris is still an idiot.
I would argue golfers are as irrational as us.
No, they're the most rational beings.
Misbehaving.
Golfers are econs.
Read misbehaving. Hey,
all right, we got
Richard Thaler. If you're listening, which is very unlikely, I am looking for a job.
I love you.
Yeah, you're a great writer,
Yeah.
too. You're funny, dude. Hey, read that book.
You are funny. You are funny, Dick.
Jared, just get a PhD in behavioral economics, and
I'm not
maybe
smart
you'll
enough,
do.
but I could give it a run. I could let it ride, baby, just like I'm letting it ride with Tiger this week.
Let it ride.
And I would lose on both gambles.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. to all those listening, stay tuned. Next week, we've got an episode about Ready Player One that is bound to be a podcast.
Oh, I'll give you hot takes.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm ready to sign off. So catch you next time.
Hey, so long, gang.
Bye.
Let's go, Eldrick.
Master of the game. Who wear that green coat on Sunday afternoon? Who walk that 18th fairway singing this